Observe these two biological responses. On the left, a knee strike triggers immediate mechanical defense. On the right, inhalation captures a complex molecular profile. These environmental stimuli require vastly different processing speeds. Survival mechanics demand instantaneous execution, while environmental analysis requires slow, high-fidelity integration. The nervous system manages these conflicting demands by utilizing distinct routing architectures, physically partitioning rapid physical responses from complex data processing. The first architecture relies on decentralized high-speed loops. These are built to manage immediate physical threats through involuntary action. The second architecture utilizes centralized networks. These systems gather dense data points from the environment to synthesize a conscious perception of the world. This reveals a core biological principle. The physical routing of a neural pathway strictly dictates the function of the response. To understand human physiology, we must look past the stimulus and map the topology, the structural path a signal takes from the sensor to the result. The textbook defines a reflex action as a response to peripheral stimulation that occurs involuntarily. By definition, it requires no conscious thought or executive oversight. The architecture of this response begins at the muscle spindle. When a mechanical stimulus hits this receptor, the circuit is activated. This sensory information travels away from the receptor via the afferent pathway, acting as a high-speed inbound signal. The afferent neuron enters the central nervous system through the dorsal nerve root, feeding directly into the spinal cord. Inside the cord, the signal moves from the outer white matter into the central gray matter. This is the handoff zone. At this pivot point, the signal bridges across an interneuron and immediately engages a motor neuron on the ventral side of the cord. The motor neuron carries the command signal back out of the central nervous system via the efferent pathway. The signal terminates at the motor end plate. As the effector receives the pulse, the muscle contracts, resulting in the physical knee jerk. This entire circuit forms a completely closed, localized loop maintained at the spinal cord level. The signal never ascends to the brain for processing. The decision to move is made entirely within the hardware of the spine. This omission of the brain reduces the physical distance the signal must travel and minimizes synaptic handoffs, cutting latency to near zero. The reflex arc is decentralized hardware designed for a single purpose, trading all analytical intelligence for raw survival speed. Beyond managing mechanical impacts, the body must simultaneously quantify microscopic data points, the chemical composition of its surroundings. The text identifies the nose and the tongue as our primary chemical sensors. These organs are specialized to detect dissolved molecules through olfaction and gustation. The nasal cavity utilizes mucus-coated olfactory receptors. These specialized sensors trap volatile molecules as they pass. This epithelium is complex, consisting of 3 distinct kinds of specialized cells that categorize incoming chemical data. On the tongue, gustatory receptors located within the taste buds perform a similar task, detecting chemicals dissolved in saliva. Olfaction and gustation are functionally interrelated. They provide parallel data streams that the body must interpret as a unified whole. Unlike the mechanical trigger of a muscle spindle, the detection of a single molecule of sugar or smoke does not force a hardwired physical twitch. These chemical receptors function as high-fidelity sensors, gathering millions of distinct data points that require cross-referencing to become biologically meaningful. Handling this influx of dense chemical data requires a different topological approach. Instead of looping back to a muscle, these sensory neurons route upward. Olfactory neurons extend from the environment, passing through the bone of the upper nasal cavity and terminating in a pair of bean-sized organs called the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb is a direct physical extension of the brain itself. From here, the circuit routes directly into the brain's limbic system. In this centralized processor, the brain receives differential inputs from the tongue and the nose simultaneously. This is where integration occurs. The brain cross-references these separate chemical signals to synthesize the unified perception of flavor. Conscious perception is the product of this centralized routing. Without the limbic system to merge these data streams, the experience of flavor does not exist. Examining the body's full wiring diagram, the structural logic becomes clear. The reflex arc is a localized serial pathway built for involuntary survival and maximum speed. The cranial sensory network is an upward-flowing pipeline built for data gathering, integration, and conscious thought. In biology, the layout of the wires determines the nature of the experience. Structure dictates function. While chemical integration is complex, there is a data-gathering apparatus that requires an even more sophisticated structural approach. The notes in this margin introduce the visual system, the pinnacle of sensory topology. Unlike the nose or tongue, the eye utilizes layered tissues like the sclera and cornea to physically capture and focus a stimulus before any neural processing can occur. If a chemical signal requires the limbic system to be understood, dissecting the multi-layered architecture of human vision will reveal the most complex processing topology in the entire body.